Hello, 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 hello. Good morning, afternoon, evening, good night, depending what part of the day it is where you are. Um, Welcome everyone to this information session for Python for beginners. I'll fill in these first 10, 15 seconds with talking about nothing until everyone joins. It's always this bit at the beginning of a meeting where people are joining, but I will start straight away. Will be about an hour today, but in part it depends how many questions you have. The aim of today is to give you a bit of information about a new course we're running at Real Python. It's a live course. I'll be telling you all about the details over the next 20, 30 minutes or so. First of all, to make sure you're in the right place, this is a course for beginners. In fact, let me stop sharing my screen. You don't need to see that anymore now. This is a course for beginners. Um, so if you are a very proficient Python programmer, you're more than welcome to stay, of course, but I'll be talking about a course that's not relevant for you probably. If, however, you are either an absolute beginner, someone who has never coded at all, programming at all, never done Python, then you're in the right place. Or often people have done a bit of the basics. They've covered the basics, perhaps from a textbook, from tutorials, but now you feel you would like a bit more structure, a bit more curated content, a live expert to guide you, to ask questions to, etc., etc. Then this is also the right place for you. So I'll be talking about a course for beginners here, just to make sure you're all in the right place. Good, good, good. Let me give you a quick intro to who I am. I'll keep it brief because you're not here to listen about me, you're here to listen about the course. So I'm Stephen. I'm a member here at one of the core team members at Real Python. And I run and curate and look at the live content at Real Python. I'll tell you more about this in a second. So this is relevant because the course I'm going to tell you about today, I've designed it, I've curated it, and I'll be running it as well. So I should be able to answer pretty much every question you have about why the structure of the course is the way it is, and the content, and how it's going to run, etc., etc. Good. There are audiences spread around different technological bits here. Some of you are on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you know who you are, you know how Zoom works, I'm sure. We've all had a lot of Zoom, right? So this is an information session, but I want you to ask questions as soon as you have them. So at any point, feel free to ask questions. Those of you on Zoom, if you want, you can raise your hand and speak up, or else there's the chat. If you ever see me looking to my left, that's where I have my second screen with all the chats so I can see your information. If you're not on Zoom, then you're on one of the social media platforms. We're streaming this on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, somewhere else. I'm not sure. I can't remember where. So if you're there, you know where you are. You should be able to ask questions as well. Although some platforms, for some reason, the messages don't come to me. So if you've asked a question and it seems like I haven't answered it, either I'll come back to it in a bit, or you might be on one of those platforms where for some reason the messages don't come to me. Don't worry, you can always reach me later if you need to. Okay, enough intro. Let me start sort of telling you about what we're here for. Now, many of you may be familiar with Real Python. If you haven't heard of Real Python before, then welcome to Real Python. But if you are familiar to some extent with Real Python, then you're probably familiar with the tutorials that are available on the website. Some of you may have also looked at the video courses, the sort of recorded video courses that Real Python has loads of. But earlier this year, in 2025, we launched live courses. So it's the first time Real Python ran live courses. We've already ran quite a few of these live courses earlier this year, but those were intermediate level courses. So this is the first time we now have a course for beginners. But this means that the format I'll be telling you about of the course is tried and tested. We've already run it several times. We've actually taken some feedback from participants of those intermediate courses we ran earlier this year. So we've even fine-tuned the format to, well, I was going to say to perfection. Nothing is ever perfect, but we think we have a lovely format, and I'll tell you about it, of course, shortly. So the focus of this course is, first of all, there's the live element of it. And that is really important because this is where we can communicate a lot better when we're talking live. I'll tell you more about how the sessions run later on. They won't be like this session where I am talking to lots of blank screens. It will be smaller groups, it will be conversations, so it will be much more interactive. This is very much an information session, so it's not very typical of how the sessions will be. So the live component is really important. But we've also wanted to build it in a flexible way because I'm sure you're busy with work, with studies, with family, friends, whatever else you might be happening throughout your week. So we wanted to find a course that is thorough and covers a lot, and I'll be telling you what's covered in the course and all of that, but also that you can fit within your busy schedule. So that's the general theme of what we are doing here. And the live aspect and the fact that you have an instructor, myself in this case, guiding you throughout the whole process, that can help because, first of all, you have someone to ask questions to and someone who'll answer questions. The discussions we'll have will allow us to dive deeper into many of these topics. And this format we find, at least some participants in previous courses told us, well, it actually helps to keep you accountable. You have daily material, you have a cohort you're learning with. So it's a good way to keep motivated and accountable. So those are the design principles of this course. Now, the rest of this session, questions from you can come at any point, but of course I'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. The brief part I want to talk to you about is split into two. I'll talk about the format of the course because you need to know whether it's the format that suits you and that fits with what you're also doing elsewhere. And then we'll talk a bit about the content. The content is easy in this case in some ways because it's a beginner's course, right? So we're going to start from the beginning, but I'll show you and I'll tell you a bit more about the beginning stuff. I can see some questions are coming in already. I've seen them. I'll get started, and then at some point I'll have a break from my sort of where I am to have a look at questions. So don't worry, I can see your questions coming in there, Ray and AS. Perfect. Good. Let me start then with talking about the format, and let me share my screen again. Where's Zoom gone? Let me move Zoom to where it should be. It keeps moving everywhere. And now I can share my screen. There we go. Well, not quite. And all I'm doing is I'm going to be live commenting, sort of keeping a record here of what we're talking about. I'll do this live. I don't use PowerPoints, and this is those of you who will join the course will have 8 weeks together. You won't see a single PowerPoint slide. I prefer to do everything live. So even here, I don't have a summary bullet points. I'll write them as I go along because I prefer it that way, and I think it's easier that way. So all I'll be doing here is writing a summary of the things I'll be discussing. So let me give you a quick overview of the key points in terms of the format of the course. So this way, within the next minute, you'll know what the course looks like. And if it's good for you, then good, stay on. If you think this is not for you, well, we can stay on as well, of course, but this gives you a good idea of what we have. First of all, it's an 8-week course. I'll come to these points and I'll tell you a bit more later on, right? So I'm going to go through a quick summary of the key points. It's 8 weeks. Well, you need to know how long the course is, right? Incidentally, the first one, we're going to be running these courses. The first ones will start in mid-October. So we're a few weeks away from the start of this first course. We will be running these courses regularly, but the first ones, the ones we have scheduled, will start mid-October. So that's 8 weeks. Roughly, you'd be expected to have around 1 to 2 hours per day, per weekday, I should say, Monday to Friday. This is the sort of commitment that you're expected to have. Now, I'm saying 1 or 2 hours per day. It will vary. Some days might be a touch longer, but then some days might be quite short as well. But roughly, this is the sort of commitment you're going to expect Monday to Friday throughout all of these 8 weeks. And I'm saying this because some of you might think, you know what, there's no way I can fit in 1 or 2 hours a day. Then this may not be the right course for you. If, however, you think, yeah, I can move things around in my day, squeeze things there and there, I'm going to have a 2 hour slot every day, give or take, and I can dedicate this to the course. And the reason is because it's 8 weeks. There's plenty happening in these 8 weeks. So those 2 hours are quite intensive. There's plenty to cover, but it should be achievable with around 1 or 2 hours per day. I'll come back and I'll add more on these in a bit. Good. Most of the day, most of the days, the material will be, and I'll tell you exactly what the day looks like in a second. It's going to be time that you can fit anywhere you want in your day. So some of the material will be there on the platform all the time. And it's up to you whether you want to do it first thing in the morning before you've had your morning coffee, or at lunchtime, or in the evening, whatever it might be. However, there are 3 fixed points in every week where there's less flexibility because these are the live sessions, and there are 3 live sessions a week. This is going to be with me. And one of them is a 90-minute structured session. I'll tell you what this means in a second, right? And this in these courses is going to happen on a Wednesday. In fact, today is a Wednesday. One of the slots will be exactly this slot. We have 2 cohorts running. One of them will have the time slot is exactly the slot you're in now. And the other course will have an earlier one in the day. So one 90-minute structured lesson per week. And then we also have 2 Q&As every week. I'll come back to this, but you can probably guess what the Q&A is, right? So you don't need me to tell you. Let me finish a summary, and then I'll come back and add a bit more. It's 10 students per cohort. Again, this is really important. We want to keep the numbers small to be able to communicate, etc. I'll tell you more. And finally, there's the forum. The forum is the glue that binds everything together. Okay, so this is the summary. Now, let me go through all of these, and I'll add a bit more. And then I'll come and start having a look at some questions there as well. A few more have come in. Good, good, good. So 8 weeks now. There isn't much to say about 8 weeks, right? But the reason we wanted to go for 8 weeks is because we want this course to be substantial. We don't want to just be scratching the surface where you learn a few things, you feel like you've learned a tiny bit of Python, but you can't really do much with it. 8 weeks is a good enough time to cover the fundamentals. We don't have to rush through it too much, because rushing through stuff just to tick them off the checklist doesn't really make much sense. This gives us time to take each topic, have time to discuss it and digest it and let it brew a bit, work on some, you'll see later on when I show you the course plan, there are lots of projects spread throughout the 8 weeks, including a large one at the end. So this will give us time to explore every topic, spend some time on it, make sure we understand it, do some exercises, work on projects, etc., etc. So that's why 8 weeks. On the other hand, you don't want it to be too long, because if it gets much longer than 8 weeks, it is intensive. Even though it's 1 or 2 hours per day, it's still an intensive course, especially if you're fitting it with other things. So once you get beyond 8 weeks, energies might start sapping. So that's the rationale behind 8 weeks. Now, what will each day look like? So I mentioned here it's about 1 or 2 hours commitment per day. Now, on most days, you'll have the following. On the platform, for every day, you'll typically have a short video from me introducing the day, just linking everything together. But then I've curated from our resources at RealPython, from the tutorials we have and the video courses we have, each day of the course, each of the 40 days in these 8 weeks, I've curated content from bits from tutorials, bits from video courses within each day. So you'll have them there. And these are reading material and video courses you'll be able to go through at any time you prefer in the day. There'll be exercises for you to work on, etc., etc. So that's going to happen pretty much every day. And that's the part which it's up to you when you want to fit it in, because it's there on the platform. Even if you want to go a day ahead or a day later, although ideally you should stick with every day, because then you're moving with the flow, but you have plenty of flexibility. I'll talk about the forum later on. That's also going on 24/7, more or less. So as you're learning, as you're going through this material, if you have questions, you can of course keep them for the live Q&As, or you can just post them on the forum straight away and start the discussion going. So that's where the 1 to 2 hours, broadly speaking, will be on every day. Then we come to live sessions. This is a key part of this course because this content is brilliant, it's great, it's well presented. We hopefully have curated it well for you, but you will have questions. You will want to, the aim of this course is to have someone to guide you, someone to be able to ask questions, to be able to have those live discussions in a session. So these 3 live sessions a week are a key, they're key milestones in each week. One of them is going to be a structured lesson. What do I mean by this? This means that some of the content won't be delivered in these articles and video courses. We will actually deliver it live in a 90-minute session every Wednesday. I say it's a structured lesson because these are small groups, and the way I like to communicate, it is very informal. We're constantly discussing with each other and sharing views, but effectively, I come with an idea of these are the topics I want to cover, and they're key topics that are part of the learning content of the week. The difference between that and the Q&As is that the Q&As, Monday and Friday in these courses, are as they say on the tin, right? I won't come with any agenda. I don't have topics I want to cover. It's very much you're asking me questions, and I will answer them, but more importantly than just answering them. In fact, often I like to say this is not a Q&A, it's a Q&A and D. The D is for discussion, because you will have questions. I will, yes, answer them, but I'll answer them by having a discussion. And those discussions often take us down interesting paths. And often I hear students say, yeah, that's where I got it. I understood that topic through those discussions. So the Q&As, and as I've mentioned, we've run this format before, and the Q&As have been really useful. Participants have told us how much they've been able to have those discussions, those unstructured discussions, and that's where you really make sure you've understood everything. So every week, Q&As are about 60 minutes long. Sometimes we go longer if there are more questions, of course. So every week we have about 3.5 hours live. So you'll get to see me a lot over these 8 weeks. I'm not sure whether that's good or bad, right? Hopefully you don't get bored of my voice too much. I'll try to keep it lively. So that's the live lessons. Size of cohorts, it's 10 per cohort. We want to keep these relatively small because I've mentioned there, we want to have discussions. It's not like this session where I'm talking to you and yes, you're asking questions in the chat and I'll answer them. This is the info session, right? In the courses, we're all seeing each other, we're all getting to know each other to some extent, but more importantly, not because I want to know what you're having for breakfast, it's because that's how we can have open discussions and conversations. So that's why each cohort is limited to a small number. We will run 2 cohorts. So at the same time, there's going to be 2 groups working through the same content. But in the live lessons, there will be 10 in one, 10 in the other. As I've mentioned, one of the time slots will be this time slot, and another one will be earlier in the day. I'll show you in a second, and you'll be able to see where all the times are in your time zone so that you can pick which one is suitable. Finally, and this I think is such an important aspect of this course. It doesn't seem like much a forum, but this is a forum exclusive for the course. And what we do is we combine the 2 cohorts into the forum. In the live lessons, we keep them separate because when we're talking live, it's important to have small groups. In the forum, it's actually beneficial to have slightly larger numbers. So the forum is for both groups, so it's 20 people or so. And this is where the conversation can keep going 24/7. I should always put an asterisk next to 24/7. I do have to sleep from time to time, unfortunately, but it's good for me, right? Throughout all my waking hours, let's put it that way, I'll be keeping an eye on the forum so that if you have a question, as long as it's not my night time, you'll get a response very quickly. And that way we can get the conversations going and keep them going throughout the whole week. Sure, we have the Q&As and the live sessions. They're important, but we're not restricted to those three bookmarks, if you like, in the week. We can keep the discussion going throughout the whole 8 weeks, roughly 24/7, minus the time to sleep. So that is the summary. Now, there's lots more I can say about the format, but what I'll do is I'll have a look at your questions, and then I'll feed from your questions in terms of what else you would like to know. Next, I'll talk about format. Oh, sorry, this was format. Next, it's 9 in the evening here, so I've had my coffees earlier in the day. I have talked about the format. Next, I'll talk about the content. But first, let me have a look at some questions I have. First of all, let me share with you a link. So for those who are on either of the chats, you've seen the link. I've shown you this link earlier already. I'll show it to you again. It's realpython.com/live. And this is where all this information I'm giving you now is there as well. You'll also find all the information about the exact timings, the exact dates of the courses, the times you see there in your own time zone, cost, how to enroll. So all of those technicalities, you'll find them in realpython.com/live. Let's have a look. Good. Do we build something real during the course? Or is it following lectures and content? So it's both. There is content, which is, as I was mentioning earlier, I've curated content from the Real Python tutorials and video courses. But we also have lots of projects. I'll show you the course structure in a bit, and you'll see lots of mini projects in most of the weeks. And there's a large project at the end of the course. So I'll answer more about the projects, the hands-on projects, when I show you the content of the course in a few minutes. That was Ricardo. Would I be prepared to take pass Python Essentials? So someone there, James, mentioned Python Essentials 1 and 2. I'm not sure specifically which certifications you're looking at there, but I'll show you the content and the topics we'll be covering in a bit. And that will give you a good idea of what topics will be covered. All the topics we're covering, we'll be covering them in a good amount of detail. So good. In realpython.com/live, you have all the sort of technical information about the course, how to enroll, etc., and costs, etc. Someone asked me, are the sessions recorded? Yes, the 90-minute sessions are recorded. The Q&As are recorded. I always recommend that participants join live, because a key part of these sessions is the discussion we're having. And of course, you cannot have a discussion in the recording. However, we understand that some people might have work meetings that might crop up in a certain week and you can't join a session, or you have to leave early in a session. So yes, the sessions are recorded. You'll get the recordings soon after every session. So you can, if you have to miss a session or part of a session, the recordings are there. One thing I should also mention is that all the content in the course, so all the daily content plus all these recordings, you'll keep access to them forever, right? So it's not just during the duration of the course. If you need to, weeks and weeks after the end of the course, come back and look at the material or look at some of the sessions we've had, they will be there. You'll have permanent access to them, including the discussions on the forum. Is this a general purpose training, or can I choose more game developing focus? So this is, I'll make that question a bit more general. This is a Python fundamentals course. So it's the fundamentals of programming that you need for every application of programming you will ever need. I often like to give this analogy. It's a bit like you're on a bright sunny day in the park and there's one of those sort of big trees, right? You have a big tree trunk and then you have lots of branches branching out. And the branches are the applications of programming: web development, game development, data science, scientific programming, etc. The only way you can get to those branches is through the main tree trunk. And the main tree trunk is the fundamentals of Python. So in this course, we're not going to be looking at specific applications of programming, but we're going to be looking at the fundamentals, which are essential for every application of programming. So this is a very much a beginner's course, a fundamentals course. So, Ron, hopefully, sorry, not Ron, Andre, hopefully that answered your question in terms of this is a Python fundamentals. So there's no specific application in mind, but it's the stuff you need for any application in Python. Good, good, good. Ron, can we choose the final project? So this was a decision, we sort of thought about this a lot. In what we're doing is we're having a single project that we're all working on as a group. And the reason we're doing that is because we felt it's the best way to make sure we can all work through the same topics at the same time and learn from each other. Someone can suggest a solution and then someone else says, my code looks like this. Why does James's code look like that? And then we can have those discussions. So rather than have everyone do different projects, this is going to be one project and we'll all work on it. I say as a team, everyone will be working individually, and that's where the forum comes in. When we've run the intermediate courses before, what used to happen is at the end of each day, participants post their code and say, look, this is what I've done for today's part of the project. Someone else says, oh, that's interesting. Here's my solution. I'm obviously there guiding, and then I'll put my solution at the end. So this is not a project that I'll be writing and you'll be copying. There's no fun in that. You'll be working on the project, but then I'll chip in and put in my sort of suggestions and my discussions. So everyone will be working on the same project, but individually. So we might end up with 10 different versions of the same project because everyone has done something slightly different, but it's the same task. Before I go to the content, a few more questions. Do we get a certificate at the end of the course? Yes, it's a real Python certification showing that you've completed the course. If you have done video courses on real Python, then you will have already seen those certifications. So this is the real Python own certification. There are two groups. Would I always have to be in one group? No. So ideally, we'd like people to more or less commit to either the morning group or the evening group or whatever time of day it is. However, there is flexibility. So if on a certain day you can't make your session and you want to make the other session, that's perfectly fine. We're covering the same material in every session. So we wouldn't like people to just keep swapping randomly, but if you need to, and of course, if there is need, if you have any specific need in mind there, say you want to join a session on Monday and Friday and a different session on Wednesday, let me know. But the answer is yes, there is flexibility. Although it's nice if mostly it's the same group for each session. Good. Version control, GitHub fundamentals. So no, in this course, we deliberately left them out because we want to focus on purely Python fundamentals. They're great topics, of course. 8 weeks is a great amount of time. We just can't cover everything. So we always have to be selective on what to put in, what to leave out. So in this case, the focus is on Python fundamentals. Version control, Git and GitHub are relevant for programming, but we chose not to include them in here. Lewis, what time will the sessions meet? If you give me 3 minutes, I'll have a look at other questions. I'll be showing you the page you need and you'll find the times in your time zone in a bit. Good. In fact, thank you, Inna, you've answered that. Let me have a look now at the questions from our YouTube and Facebook. I've always had I'll read it out because you can't always see everyone's questions. I've always had an interest in Python. My issue has always been retaining what I learned and working on real-world projects. I hope there's project-based learning as well. No question there, sorry, it's a comment, but yes, that is a very common approach. And this is the problem with just learning the theory. Learning the theory, you often think like, yeah, that makes sense, but how do you translate that into practice? And this is why we have lots of projects scattered around the whole course, and I'll tell you more about these in a bit. What does a beginner have to do in order to become ready for writing the simplest app? Okay, so this is a question we get often. How much Python programming do I need to be able to be good at programming? And unfortunately, this is a how long is a piece of string type of question. It depends how much proficiency you want to get to. So with this course, we're aiming to cover the fundamentals and cover them really well. Is this enough? Are the fundamentals enough to go and build a complex project? No. It doesn't matter where you learn the fundamentals are rarely enough. Why? Because then you want to use those and gain more experience and start to look at more intermediate topics. However, you can't get to that point without the fundamentals. So how many hours of learning do you need in order to write an app? It really depends on how complex the app you want to be. But programming is not something you can do in a few hours. It's a technical subject, and like many technical subjects, you need to dedicate some time to it. In this course, we'll get the fundamentals and we'll get them right. We'll make sure you really understand the fundamentals well. One thing I believe in when teaching is not just to describe how to do things, but why do we do things in that way? And the why is really important, I think, because you have all the pieces of the jigsaw and you might understand them all, but why do we do things in this way is what helps you put those pieces together. And when you want to write an app, an application from scratch, it's that putting things together that is really important. Knowing the topics in isolation will not help you because every program has lots of different bits working together. So I put a lot of emphasis in what we do here at Real Python, put a lot of emphasis on not just here's how you write code and here's how you write a for loop, but why do we do it this way? How we always like to dig a bit deeper underneath the surface. Which software are you using now? I assume you mean this, right? Okay. This is MindNode for a Mac, if you're in case you're interested. How do you join the cohort? The link I've sent you if you want to look into enrolling, realpython.com/live. I'll paste it again in a bit. Ray, you've already answered my question. Second question, will I need to book or will I need a book or will the course be enough substitute what I learn? No, you don't need a book for this course for the reason that every day we have the content that you need. The daily content, I'll show you in a second, includes reading material, video courses, and then of course there are live lessons. That creates all the material you need. Now, of course, if there's a book you like and you want to have it in addition, it's not going to harm, but you don't need a book alongside this course because the material is there. And the reminder, you'll keep access to the material forever, not just for the duration of the course. Good. Okay, I'll come back to more questions. I think I've answered most of them. There were some repeat questions. I'll come and have a look again later. Let me now move on to why isn't this working? There we go. The content of the course. So I did mention this is a beginner's course. So really, if you are an absolute beginner, you've never done any programming before, the stuff I'm going to show you now won't mean anything to you, right? But maybe you've done a bit of programming, maybe you sort of know the topics. So I'll show you what's in every day of the course. By the way, this is what you find at realpython.com/live. So I'm not going to read through every bullet point here. I'm just going to give you an overview. You can then come later and have a look at this in detail if you want to. No prior knowledge is needed for this course. Now, some of you may have already covered some of the basics, but if you've never done any programming before at all, this is still the course for you. So we're going to start with the basics. And these include topics like variables, if statements, loops, etc., etc., etc. These are the fundamental building blocks that you cannot do anything in programming without these building blocks. So we'll start from the basics as you would expect. I did mention the mini projects, by the way. So you can see there on most weeks, there's going to be a mini project. This will be a project that will span just this week or sometimes 2 weeks. And this project, as you can expect, will use the topics we've been learning about. So throughout the week, along with learning the material, we'll also be working on this mini project. Here are the times, by the way. Here it's showing my time zone because this is on my computer. But when you go to realpython.com/live, you'll see this in your own time zone. And you can see there are two sessions there. So find whichever session suits you. The sessions are at the same time every week. There's a warning I need to give you. In many parts of the world, the clocks change from daylight saving at some point throughout this course. Unfortunately, these happen at different times in different parts of the world. Those of you in North America, you change your clocks at a certain time. Those of you in Europe, like myself, change the clocks at a different time. Some parts of the world follow the US system, some parts follow US, some parts don't change at all. So bear in mind that at some point, these slots may shift by 1 hour and then back depending on the daylight saving. So just keep an eye on that to make sure it works for you. But a reminder, if in that particular week it doesn't work, sessions are recorded. Okay, we then move to week 2. And iteration is a fancy word for being able to repeat something over and over again, being able to go through lots of items in a sequence. And this is such an important part in coding because a lot of coding is about doing the same task repeatedly on many different objects. So that's what iteration is, things like for loops. And we'll also be talking about what's called the data structure. Programming needs data, information, and we need to store this information somewhere. And lists are one of the most common and one of the most important tools we use in Python to store things in an ordered sequence. So you cannot work with Python at any level without coming across lists, and you need to know lists, which is why they're early on. You can see there's another mini project there on week 2. Week 3 is what I sometimes call the superpower in programming. Defining functions is probably one of the most important topics. There are two ways of looking at it. It's one way of defining your own words in Python. You define your own command that does something specific to your program. Another way of looking at it is this is a mini program which is self-contained within the larger program. And this allows you to take functions, that's why, take some functionality in your program, you bundle it in a mini program, and then you can reuse it whenever you need to. So functions are such an important aspect of modern programming. They make programming so powerful, and therefore it's important we understand not just how to use functions, but how to create our own functions. And yet again, a mini project, as you can see. I've mentioned already that a program stores information and does stuff with that information. Functions are a way of doing stuff with the information, right? But we also need to store the information. We've already talked about lists, but lists aren't the only way of storing data. So here we're going to be looking at a few more. Things such as dictionaries, for example. And again, if you've never heard of these things, don't worry. We'll learn all about them, etc., etc. And yet again, you can see these are different mini projects, right? Sometimes they span a couple of weeks, but typically these are different mini projects. Incidentally, I was mentioning on time zones earlier, so the changes happen around week 3 or week 4. I think in Europe we swap times a week earlier than North America, and some other parts of the world you might not swap at all. So keep an eye on the times that they might change slightly because of this lack of sync between different parts of the world. Week 5. In week 5, I'll have a sip of water. I talk a lot, right? In this session, I talk a lot, but in real sessions, we'll be chatting to each other, so I'll get breaks. In week 5, we're going to introduce a topic which is sometimes considered a bit more intermediate. So what is it doing in a beginner's course? So object-oriented programming is what's often called a paradigm, a fancy word, which means a style of programming. And we're introducing it in a beginner's course. So this is a gentle introduction, right, to object-oriented programming. This is a much deeper topic. This will get you started with this topic, and then you can deepen your knowledge in the future, either by yourself or in other courses, etc., etc. Why is object-oriented programming included here? You may not know what object-oriented programming is, right? And that's what week 5 of the course is about, of course. 2 reasons. First of all, it's a an important topic in programming itself as a standalone topic. And therefore, having an introduction of it early on is important because it shows you one direction of how programs can look and feel, which is different to the more basic type of programming. So it's useful to get an early taste of what this type of programming looks like. Second reason is that Python is inherently an object-oriented programming. So underneath the hood, behind the surface of Python, everything is object-oriented. So understanding the basics of this type of programming helps us understand Python at a much deeper level. So those are the two reasons why, even though object-oriented programming, OOP for short, is sometimes considered a more intermediate topic, we want to introduce it here. It will also help us link lots of things we would have done in weeks 1 to 4 will now make a lot more sense once we realize why they are the way they are. And that's where object-oriented programming comes in. Week 6, we talk a bit more about object-oriented programming for the first half of the week. And then we finish off by talking about debugging. Now, no matter how good anyone is, the best programmers in the world will still have bugs in their code. Bugs are when you have something that doesn't work the way you expect it to. And that's fine. That's normal. It's so normal that we have a whole topic in programming, debugging, finding the bugs, understanding where they are and what they are, and fixing them. So we'll introduce some of the key techniques for debugging that will get you going into debugging is sometimes a bit more of an art than a science, but there are still some techniques that you can use to investigate where the problem is. This is where debugging is where you put your detective hat on. You're sort of trying to solve a mystery, if it were. And there are tools and techniques in the same way that detectives have techniques to find culprits or whatever. So we'll talk about debugging towards the end of week 6. Now, weeks 1 to 6 are where we're covering the material. You've seen there are many mini projects as we go along, but the last 2 weeks, so week 7 and week 8, we'll be working exclusively on the final project for this course. I've mentioned earlier, this will be one project that we will work on together. You'll all be working on your own version of the project, but it's the same project. And the idea of this project is to take all the topics we've covered and learned about in weeks 1 to 6 and to use them, bring them all together into a project that uses all of these bits and brings them, the jigsaw pieces, we put them together. So the way these final 2 weeks will work is that I'll more or less set what we're trying to achieve in every day. There are 10 days in all, right? 2 weeks, 5 days. So I'll say, look, on day 1, we'll try to achieve this. On day 2, we'll try to achieve that. You'll go and work on it. Post your questions on the forum, post your code on the forum. We compare versions, etc., etc. I'll then come in at the end of the day, take bits of what everyone has done, write my own version so that if someone wants to look at a version from me, then we have it there. And then we move on to day 2. Again, this is what we want to do in day 2 of the project. You work on it throughout the day, discuss it on the forum, etc., etc. And that will be the final 2 weeks of the course. Good. This brings me to more or less the end of what I wanted to say. I'll do some wrapping up in a bit. I'll have a look at some questions first. Before I go for the questions, let me come back here. It's not starting soon. Let me go to this page. This is the URL. I've shared it earlier. Let me get rid of this, right? This was a timer. So all the details of when the page I was showing just now, right? The details of what's in the course day by day, the times of the sessions, the cost of the course, how to enroll, etc., etc. Everything is on realpython.com/live. So some of the questions I can see there, I'll send you to realpython.com/live. Everything you need to know about the course, the stuff I've mentioned here, and all the details that you might want to know. Let me have a look at some questions I haven't answered yet. Not many have come in since I've answered the ones before. What tips or recommendations do you have for me to get the most out of this course? This is a great question. The way I'll answer it is, we've put a lot of thought into how we want to design this course. So my best answer is to follow the content I give you for each day of the course. So every day of the course, there are 40 days, right? 8 weeks times five, Monday to Friday. Every day, if you join the course, you log on to the course page on the platform, and every day we'll have the material. This is the material for today. My advice would be to try to keep up. You follow that material. Any question you have, you go and ask on the forum straight away. Don't just think, oh, maybe this is a silly question, or just ask questions, because asking questions and having discussions, I think, is where a lot of the learning comes in. Engage in the live sessions. Try to bring your questions, ask questions, and I think following that path day after day after day for these 80 days will be the best to get out of the course. Of course, at the end of the 8 weeks, things shouldn't stop there. You should use this as a platform to then go, even before you go and start learning more topics, you want to take the material you've learned in these courses and start using them, start working on your own projects or other exercises. And programming is one of those topics where you need to learn the fundamentals, of course, but then you need to get comfortable with using them. So learning from a book is not enough. Learning from tutorials is not enough. It's important, but you then want to go and practice it. We'll have lots of projects in this course, but at the end of the course, you want to keep writing code with what you've learned. Um, Oliver, I'm not sure I understood that. AI, we can talk about AI, by the way. So I don't know whether people have questions about AI or etc. Um, I think AI assisted coding has made programmers so much more powerful. So will AI replace programmers? Maybe at some point in the future, in 5, 10 years time. The current AI will definitely not. However, it does mean that every programmer can become a lot more efficient, a lot more proficient. In fact, I think many companies have been laying off developers, are starting to hiring them back now. Yes, there'll be need for fewer developers, perhaps fewer programmers, but never as much as now has a knowledge of the fundamentals of programming allowed you to do so much. 5 years ago, when I would be teaching these courses, I would say, look, the fundamentals are great, but with the fundamentals alone, there's a limited amount you can do. In order to write more complex, someone asked me earlier, how long do I need to be able to write complex projects? The fundamentals are important, but like with every topic, they're not enough. However, nowadays, once you know the fundamentals well, AI can help you extend and stretch those fundamentals, and therefore you can achieve much more. Can you use AI to create code without knowing any coding? In practice, no. The very few applications are so risk-free that anyone is going to take the risk of having an AI-generated code with no real-life programmer checking it, using it in real-life production. So in practice, what AI is doing is it's speeding up the process of programming, because now one programmer can get a lot more quicker, a lot more done quicker. But at the moment, at least, this might change in 5, 10 years time. We might have a different type of AI, probably not LLM based. LLMs will always have this limitation because of how they work. So we might have something in the future which will replace programmers. The current AI is not that, but the current AI means that your knowledge of programming now takes you so much more. So the fundamentals now take you much further than they did 5, 10 years ago. I'm not sure whether that was your AI question, but anyway, if anyone wants to talk about AI, let me know. Another question on Zoom. In the process, we'll be learning how to use an IDE like Python. So using an IDE is not part of the course, right? On day 0 of the course, so before you start the course, we give you resources on how to install Python, how to install PyCharm. So there are resources if you want to explore it. Why? Because the focus here is on learning Python rather than learning IDEs, but we'll be using IDEs. It doesn't matter what you use, right? I'll be using PyCharm because that's the one I use, but one thing I'll tell you on day one is it doesn't matter what tools you use. But you're going to spend 8 weeks using these tools. And of course, if you have questions, we can discuss them and figure it out. So we don't have specific lessons on how to use an IDE, but you're going to be using one. And for those who are not familiar with the lingo, an IDE is the software you use. It's an integrated development environment, I think. It's the type of software we can use that gives you a whole package on sort of all the tools you need to program. So we don't have specific lessons on using IDEs, but we're going to be using them all the time. You're going to be seeing me using them in all the live lessons. So you will get a good idea of how to use them. Good. In the chats, let me post the link again, which actually is on your screen again. Okay. Let me do my wrapping up. But if you still have questions, please do post them. By the way, those of you who are on Zoom, if you want to speak live, raise your hand, let me know. You can, of course, ask in the chat, but if someone wants to use your actual voice, please do go ahead. Let me do the quick wrap up of what I've discussed in brief. In fact, let me do this on here. There you go. So in summary, this is a course for beginners, either absolute beginners who have not done anything before, or as often is the case, those who have dabbled a bit with programming. Maybe they've learned some of the basics, but they feel that it still doesn't quite make sense. And they're looking for a structured, instructor-led course with live elements, with other students learning together to really get it done and to get it done properly. It's 8 weeks. The first course starts on the mid-October. I think it's the 13th off the top of my head. Anyway, it's on the page I've shown you before, all the way to the 5th of December, I believe. We will have more courses later on, but these are the ones we have scheduled for now. You need to make sure you have around 1 to 2 hours per day of commitment. Now, if there's going to be a day where you're just too busy, that's fine, as long as you know you'll be able to make it up the day after, or in the weekend or whatever. It's fine to fall back by a day or two, but it's not a good idea to fall back by much more than that. So this is the course for you if you know you can commit fairly consistently 1 to 2 hours per day. Lots of the material is flexible. You can do it whenever you want, but we do meet live 3 times a week. There's going to be 10 students per cohort. There are 2 cohorts running at the same time, but each group will be able to chat and communicate and discuss. And the glue that brings everything together 24/7, more or less, is the forum where we'll keep the discussions going. And I can't stress how much, how important the forum is. Previous students on the intermediate courses I've mentioned before mentioned it over and over again, how the discussions we're having every day. I tend to also post some extra content on the forum, some sort of thoughts about the day's topics. So there's plenty happening on the forum every day. Some of you may have joined me in the summer. I ran a few workshops for beginners in the summer. If you haven't and you want to have a look, they're very different from this course, right? But if you want to have a sense of sort of a beginner's course, I ran 3 workshops in the summer. You'll be able to find them on the Real Python YouTube page if you're interested. That's just to give you a flavor of what Python. If you've never done any programming before, maybe you want to see, is this for me? Have a look at those workshops on YouTube. One more question has come in. Will this course be enough to prepare us to take the intermediate course? I assume you mean the intermediate course that we're running here at Real Python. So yes and no. The intermediate course is a bit more advanced. So typically, the advice would be that you'd spend a bit of time working on and getting really familiar with the fundamentals before you move on to the intermediate course. We would not recommend doing the Python for Beginners course and then immediately afterwards doing the intermediate course. It is possible, but it's usually beneficial if you've gained some experience with using the fundamentals before you do the intermediate course. We are planning to actually have a bridging course, something in between, which will be a much shorter course. Probably is going to be about 1 or 2 weeks. But at the moment, I would suggest having a gap between them where you're spending a bit of time becoming very comfortable and familiar with the fundamentals before you move on to intermediate. If some of you are here, by the way, and thinking, this sounds interesting as a format, but that's too basic for me. I already know that stuff. As I've mentioned, we've been running the intermediate courses earlier this year. We will run them again. January is the next date. If anyone wants, let me know by email or find me and I'll send you the link for the intermediate course. The next time that we run is in January. But I'll focus on the beginner's course here. Incidentally, I've mentioned at the very beginning, by the way, this session is recorded. Those of you on Zoom, I'll send you the recording later on. Those of you who are watching this on some social media stream, if you can't find the recording on the social media stream you're on, you'll find it on the YouTube page. Real Python YouTube page is where you'll definitely find this recording. If you can't, email me or email the main Real Python email address and we'll send you the link. So if you've just joined this session or this session is also recorded and you have the recordings there. Yes, I was going to say in the beginning, I mentioned how this is the first year here at Real Python that we're running live courses. And we're gradually building a repertoire, a catalog of courses. The first one, as I've mentioned, was the intermediate course, and we've run it 4 times already. They were all full and very successful. Now we've designed and we're launching the Python for beginners, and these will keep running we'll keep running all of these courses throughout the year, but we'll also be adding a few more courses. These are the long flagship courses. They won't always be 8-week courses. Sometimes there'll be more specialized courses, perhaps 1 or 2 weeks on some specific topic. So we are planning to grow the catalog of courses we are working on. If you're a beginner, this is the place to start because everything else will be not for beginners, of course. But if you're here thinking, I like the format, but I'm not a beginner, then we will have courses for you, such as the intermediate ones, such as other courses. How often will the beginner courses start? So we have 2 courses starting in October. So these are the ones that are currently scheduled. Now, we don't have 2026 fully scheduled yet. We do have the intermediate course scheduled for January. It is likely, but I don't want to promise you because it's not yet set in stone. It is likely that the next beginner's course will be then around Easter time in 2026. So after the intermediate courses. So typically you'd expect that we'll run these about twice a year for the time being. You can expect them to run about twice a year. So October now, and then around Easter time, but it's not confirmed yet. So don't hold me to that date, but roughly that's what you would expect. So for the time being, these will be the only ones we have scheduled, and the next ones won't be immediately. They'll be certainly not in the first few months of 2026. Good. I've got a question from Eva there. I want to start cybersecurity. Python is recommended language. Any of the CS courses we covered. So I mentioned this before, but people come in and out, so I'll say it again. This course will not look at any specific applications of programming. So we'll not be looking at cybersecurity or anything specifically. These are the fundamentals. Now, you need the fundamentals for any application of Python. Doesn't matter what it is, cybersecurity, web development, game development, science, whatever it might be. But this course, the beginner's course, covers the fundamentals. So it's not looking at any specific application of programming. Good. I'll pause a bit in case someone still has a question and they're typing it in or you're thinking about it. So I won't stop this meeting straight away. But I think I've covered all the questions. If you've posted a question and I haven't answered it, do post it again because I may have missed it. But I think I have answered all the questions. And unless there are other questions coming in, then thank you for joining. Hopefully, I'll see some of you, maybe many of you. Well, it can't be all of you because the courses are linked, but hopefully, I'll see some of you in October for these courses. If you have questions beyond this, if you want to find out specifically whether this course is the right one for you, for example, do contact me. I'm very happy to talk to you individually or by email or what have you. So if you're unsure, you maybe you've done a bit of my, you contact me. Those of you who are on Zoom, you'll get an email from me. Those of you watching the stream, you'll find me whatever social media platform you're on. You'll probably find me. Well, not all of them actually. I'm not on all of them, but anyway, you'll find me somewhere. Or else, just send an email to Real Python, say that you want to talk to Stephen, and I'll always get that email. Good, good, good. Yeah, Jim, yeah, someone has posted the link, realpython.com/live. In fact, I'll finish on that. Everything you need is on that link. If there are no more questions, I'll let you carry on with your morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Thank you for joining. We'll be in touch if you need to, and hopefully I'll see you on the course. Bye-bye.